Training camp continues as the Buffalo Bills inch closer and closer to the 2023 season. This week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You are now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo FAMBase podcast network. My name is Justin. I will be your host today. And kind of a continuation of last week's episode, right? Where Bills are moving through training camp and just kind of gathering the thoughts that I see from people covering the team. The little snippets that I'm able to see of practice. I haven't been able to get out to any of the practices myself. Just a ton going on in my life right now. It's also August always ends up being a really hectic month. We've got birthdays, anniversaries, all kinds of stuff going on. So something that since McDermott has taken over, he's a lot more buttoned up with the media than the Bills used to be. I remember back in the day when all these practices would start happening. You'd be able to go right on buffalobills.com and like every highlight play from the day, they'd show like full clips from scrimmages, 11 on 11s, all that. A lot harder to get those types of clips these days. So it's kind of just, pouring over everything as I can't get enough of the Buffalo Bills, right? So a lot of observations from people I follow, and just like the beat reporters of the Bills. So just kind of talking about the highs and lows of what we've seen through camp, some of the progressions of the positional battles. And I want to start on defense today. I feel like we so often lead with the offense. For me, I find the offensive side of the ball a little bit more exciting, more often than not. That's how you're scoring points. It's how you win games. But I want to start with the defense this week because I'm really excited for this Bills defense. And the way it's shaping up, I feel like I'm going to get a little bit of what I was calling for last year. And that was just more aggression from the defense. We've seen this, bend but don't break philosophy, and it works pretty well a lot of the time. It's gonna help you win a lot of football games when you have a potent offense going on. But I've always kind of wanted this defense to kind of evolve and be more aggressive, based on the offense that you have. Create a more opportunistic defense, try to force tighter throws, get some turnovers that way, and really, take some risk knowing that your offense is one of the best in the league and has your back if you make a mistake and the other team gets some points. Particularly with the duo that we have at safety back there, that they're really going to help cover up mistakes that are made on the underneath stuff. And this defense has been one of the best in the league at limiting the big plays down the field. So hearing a lot of stuff about how aggressive McDermott's defense is looking, did a ton of work practicing blitz packages. And this isn't just, standard linebacker blitzes. These are, coming from the secondary, safeties, cornerbacks, everybody's an option to go on any play. Some formations where, DNs are dropping into, a linebacker zone and one of the linebackers is coming. All these kinds of things that you can do to really confuse an offense and take them out of what they think you're going to do. It's something that's always made Poyer and Hyde together so special. Just being able to disguise, showing one look and moving into something else. And to go with that, I've been hearing some great reporting on the defensive line, and I'm not going to be fully sold on it until we start playing regular season games. There's been so much investment made in the defensive line, and we haven't quite gotten it right. And last year was feeling like, we almost had it, and then Von Miller goes down. But from everything I've heard and seen so far, it seems like AJ Epinesa is having a huge camp. Ended last year with 6.5 sacks. So kind of like a high and low season for him, but a sneaky good end result. And I thought bringing in Floyd, he was going to be the clear cut, number 2 opposite of Groot, and then be rotating with Groot when Von was back. It sounds like Epinesa is kind of making a case for himself at that 2 spot. So, probably ends up still being kind of the depth rotational guy who's still going to get a lot of snaps in this defense. But kind of a pleasant surprise, him kind of blossoming as far as we can see it so far. Been hearing great things about Ed Oliver, who's a player that's kind of been a little hot and cold, a little streaky. There's games where he's just absolutely destroying everything in the backfield every play, and some games where he kind of disappears a little bit. And with Daquan Jones already in the building, the addition of Poona Ford, I think we're poised to see a monster season from Ed Oliver. It's kind of always been, he plays really well off of having that big guy next to him and letting him work one-on-one. And other players can have impacts if teams have to start double teaming Oliver. So we wanted to see that for so long with Star Lotulelei in the mix. We saw how effective Daquan Jones was last year, and hopefully getting a full season out of him, and the addition of Poona Ford as like another legit backup for him. It's really feeling like we have the right mix on that defensive line, and kind of the secondary already existed. So on the front end and the back end, you're pretty well covered. Speaking of the secondary, we've been watching the CB2 battle playing out again. It seems to me like Dane Jackson still has that edge on. If I were betting right now, I would bet that Dane Jackson's the day 1 starter. But look, we still have a ton of football and practices to happen before, kickoff week 1. Elam seems to be getting more and more in the mix. So hopefully, he can really secure that job before the season starts. But I'm feeling pretty good about that CB2 position. We know what we have in Dane Jackson, and it's not elite top tier cornerback, but he's been a passable to good starter. So when you start mixing up the battles between Benford, Elam, and Dane Jackson, I feel like not only are we going to have a good starting cornerback 2 out there, we're going to have some of the best depth in the league at the position. And we've seen over the past couple of years, get a little thin out there. Not anymore. I feel really good about our depth at that position going into this season. And then finally on the defensive side of the ball, want to wrap up with probably the biggest question mark on this roster, I would say, and that's the middle linebacker position. We saw Balen Spector have, kind of a shining couple days, and he seems to have kind of faded to the background a little bit. The organization has come out and said Dorian Williams is working on that outside linebacker. He's kind of, at least for now, out of that middle linebacker discussion. So it looks to me like it's kind of down to a two-man race between Dotson and Bernard. And I've been hearing good things coming out of camp about Terrell Dodson. He's been in the system for a long time. Who knows? Maybe he just needed that opportunity. I don't think this is going to end up being a clear cut. This is the Mike linebacker. I see this being a platoon position until they really feel comfortable that they have an every down player out there. I could see this being, Terrell Dodson on short yardage stuff, more run situations, and, third and long, and we're not going to dime or, having rep come into the game. I could see Bernard coming in those kind of positions and having a little bit more range to him. But I also think that there is probably a bigger plan for rep than we're expecting. And I wouldn't be all that surprised if, our formation on 3rd and 10 is, just straight pass rush up front, reducing like Greg Rousseau inside with Ed Oliver. When we get there, Von Miller and Floyd on the edges, and then kind of still having like a three linebacker look, but you got Taron Johnson on one side and Taylor Rapp on the other. Just love the versatility that they've brought into this already outstanding defense. And much like they've kind of done with the offense, they've given themselves a lot of opportunities to show different looks, to run different defenses. And, you can have a ton of stuff on tape of what you think we're going to do in this situation. And there's going to be a different pivot, a different counter available. So I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've seen from the offense. And of course, Josh Allen's fancy helmet. Stick around.
Hey, this is Bills Vader. Now back to the show.
Welcome back in, and thank you again for joining me on this week's episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. We're going to dive back into training camp discussion, and we're going to focus on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to start with the quarterback position. Josh Allen being Josh Allen. There was the day that McDermott was really dialing up the blitzes. It sounds like not only Josh Allen struggled, but Barkley, Kyle Allen, just going all the way through the offense. Just a bad day for them. But then, a bounce back day for Josh Allen, looking better. One of the concerning things that I've heard coming out of camp is not only is Kyle Allen playing at about the same level as Matt Barkley, there's even times where Barkley's, outplaying him. There's been issues with securing snaps, just errant passes. And look, if we're being honest about it, this team is going to go as far as Josh Allen takes it. There's not a ton of teams in the NFL that, if their starting quarterback goes down, they have any chance. And if your starting quarterback goes down and you have pretty comparable play out of your backup, your starting quarterback probably wasn't one of those elite guys. So obviously the most important position in football, and we have a guy who's, call it what you want, I'll say top 3. He's 1, 2, or 3. If he goes down for any extended period of time, you're already in trouble, right? But going through the offseason, we kind of talked about, if something happens and Josh misses 4 or 5 games, you just want a quarterback that's going to get you through, keep you 500 till your quarterback's back. I still think that's possible with either Barkley or Allen. just with what I think this defense is going to be and how many weapons are on offense. But that's all I was really looking for out of the backup quarterback. And what I'm hearing thus far hasn't been very reassuring in that department. The other thing that has come out that's been a little bit concerning is coming from the scrimmage on Friday. Just hearing about some drops going on, and Dalton Kincaid had had a drop in the scrimmage. I'm not gonna be waving any white flags, red flags, whatever. This dude is known for his hands, went through his whole college career without having a drop. I'm not going to be concerned about that. But it was followed up with a Gabe Davis drop and a Dawson Knox drop, who are both guys that have struggled with drops in the past. Now, everything else that I've heard coming out about these two during camp has been overwhelmingly positive. So I'm not hitting the panic button. I'm not, freaking out. But it is something to keep an eye on. It has been a pleasant surprise during this camp, just hearing Gabe Davis talk about last year, just talking about his struggles with the ankle injury, and then seeing all the news coming out about him, I guess, of what he's looked like through camp. Just improving in the short to intermediate area, getting separation, dropped a little weight, so he's feeling better at his playing weight. Still a big boy that can high point a ball. And this is something that I've kind of been critical on with Gabe Davis. It's something that I didn't really, I don't expect it to be, year 4 of a receiver, and we see a whole different type of skill set emerge. But that's kind of what we're seeing through camp so far. Just kind of becoming that do-it-all receiver. You hear Stefon Diggs say that if he wasn't there, Davis would be a number 1. I don't think I'm ready to go that far with it, but makes me feel a whole lot better about him being a number 2 going into the season. And my big thing with Gabe Davis from last year was I've talked about feeling like the team kind of let him down as he got this promotion. Yes, Jamison Crowder went down, but they never really had that slot last year. There was more on Gabe Davis's plate than they really intended. And that even if he went back to what he was asked to do 2 years ago, kind of in a bigger role, but the same role, that we could see him succeed. So this year, going into it, seemingly taking care of that slot position with not only bringing in Hardy, Sherfield, Shakir having another year under his belt, drafting Dalton Kincaid. You have 4 legitimate options to use in that slot. Oh, and Gabe Davis is developing other facets of his game. This dude is poised to have an absolute monster season across from Diggs. And I've said it on here before. I'm team sign Gabe Davis now. He's never going to be cheaper than he is today. And just who he is as a person, we see how hardworking he is. Everybody has the most glowing things to say about Gabe Davis. If he has the season he's about to have, he's about to get bananas money. So you either got to lock him up now or prepare for him to be gone next season, because once football starts, he's going to price himself out of Buffalo. Getting into the running game a little bit. Highs and lows for James Cook. He's showing that wiggle, that explosiveness that we saw from him last year. Started out the scrimmage with ripping off a big run that if that was in a game, to me that was going the distance. struggling in pass protection. So what will that mean for how much he's able to get on the field? Obviously a team that is pass first. You want to protect Josh Allen. You want him to be able to work within the offense. Damian Harris is a better pass blocker right now, and he's been sufficient in the run game. Then you factor in Latavius Murray being a bigger back that I think makes the roster. And, if you have to take James Cook off the field in, obvious passing situations, or maybe not even obvious passing situations, 1st and 10, you want to throw the ball, and you don't have trust in him to pass protect, that's gonna eat into his snap share, right? So I'm really excited for James Cook, the pure runner of the football, and even running back out of the backfield. I'm gonna be looking through the remainder of camp and into the preseason of what he looks like pass blocking. And then I'll wrap up with the big boys up front, the offensive line. It seems like kind of a mixed bag from the offensive line so far. And, not exactly the kind of news that we want to hear. Personally, I'm, super excited about McGovern coming in. With how much Saffold struggled last year, Torrance coming in, having options, having depth, go out and sign Edwards. Just a lot of pieces brought in, and similar to the defensive line, this is one that it's an area that they've been trying to get right for a few years. Now this is another one where I'm not pressing the panic button. In particular, the day that, we're talking about Sean McDermott's bringing the house, throwing exotic looks out there, trying out blitz packages. Sounds like the offensive line struggled a lot. And the offensive line is a big one for me that really takes time to gel and get the communication out so everybody knows what everybody is responsible for. And to me, that's one of the things that takes the longest to come together through an off season. Sometimes you even see it going into the regular season of they're just not quite on that same page. I think it's partially that, and I'm also going to give the kudos to the defensive line, right? You can't have me on one side of the show talking about how much better I think the defensive line is, like how it's just like a cheat code compared to last year, which was already a pretty good defensive line. I can't talk about how great I think our defensive line is and then just be like, well, the defensive line is winning reps, so that means the offensive line automatically sucks, Would like to hear it being, more of a seesaw battle, and we just have two great groups on both sides of the ball. But like I said, I think that's going to take some time. I wouldn't even say that our starting five is locked in at this point. We're still seeing Bates rotating with McGovern. How could I forget? Then we see after practice, Spencer Brown coming up really stiff. I believe he played in the scrimmage, so I not overly concerned about that right now. But what's the plan at the backup right tackle if Spencer Brown is going to miss time, if he's struggling? So a little bit more question marks on the offensive line that I would like at this point. Hopefully, Osiris Torrance can, just come in and be the player that a ton of people expect him to be. Tons of mock drafts have him going in the first round. The Bills get him in the second round. I'm hoping that he can be a day one starter, and then Bates is just, pretty high end depth across the whole offensive line. So say my two biggest position battles that I'm watching as we continue to go through camp. I guess kind of 3 because I have to stay on the cornerback 2 battle, but with the cornerback 2 battle, I feel pretty comfortable with whatever result comes from that. So going forward, where I'm going to be really lasered in is just the offensive line in general, and then the middle linebacker position. Other than that, everything's sounding overall pretty good out of camp. It's not the time of year where, they give you a bunch of bad stuff to focus on. Typically, they're, highlighting the good more than the bad. But I guess there's really only so much bad that you can, kind of cover up and mask with the good stuff if it's going on a lot. So we know what this team is. We know, lost 3 games last year, total of 8 points. How many times have you heard it? Super stoked for the season because I think we either maintained or got better at almost every position. And you hear it all over the media. They got Jets are going to win the division. Dolphins are going to win the division. Yada, yada, yada. And we go from being Super Bowl favorites to an improved roster, and nobody's talking about the Bills anymore. And honestly, I've always preferred it that way. I like being the hunters and not the hunted. And that I feel like that whole narrative is going to shift real quick. Bills come into the season 5-0, and nobody's talking that blah blah anymore. So stick around for all our shows. We're dropping every Monday as we move through training camp into preseason. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Make sure you're not missing any of the episodes. And if you've made it this far in the episode, do me a favor, check out the website. Our producer, Jake, has put a ton of work into the site. We got some merch up there. He's got new shirt concepts coming out just about every week right now, some limited time stuff. So Jake's working his tail off for that website, and it's looking great. Check it out. And that is going to wrap it up tonight. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. And as always, go Bills.